first learned how to throw pots on the wheel at school when I was 14, but it was to be 20 years before I built my first pottery at the bottom of my garden in 1990. I called myself the Whistle-Stop Pottery because I specialise in the production of clay wind instruments based on the principle of the ocarina, the world's oldest wind instrument. My biggest seller is the haggis whistle, which I market, especially to tourists, as a traditional Scottish instrument, possibly used by Robert Burns himself for hunting haggis, which in skilled hands perfectly mimics the mating call of the haggis. I'm going to show you the steps in making a haggis whistle, starting from a thrown form. So watch closely, it will all become clear. The second end is thrown separately. Right, what we're going to do now is actually make the whistle. They dried out overnight, and what I did is I smoothed off the end of it. Remember, it was fairly rough from just cutting off the wheel, so I smoothed off the end and I made an impression in the end just to simulate the knotted end of a haggis, and I flattened the base just so it will sit nicely on the deck. So we're now going to make it whistle with the odd tools I've got. So you make the first impression right across the body. Make sure you don't go down into the clay. Cut off the extra clay. Flatten it a bit. And I'm making a little notch just so that when we come to string it, the string sits in the right position. And we've got to get this absolutely sharp edge here. That's where the skill comes in, and after making about 10,000 of these things, I can usually get it fairly right first time. So I'm going to make like a little hole in the bottom. So it's a two-tone whistle. Just get this absolutely the right angle. Right gap. With any luck, this should work. There we go, pretty good. Make some scratching on the end and some runny clay. Whenever you're joining bits of clay, you always scratch the surface and add some runny clay. These are the extra ends that I threw separately. Again, make our impression to simulate the knotted end. Smooth it up. And there we have one little haggis whistle, ready now just to dry off for a couple of days. Oh, let's put my little stamp on it. Just show that's made by me. And that little thing just says made in Scotland, because people like to know that it's a proper locally made Scottish whistle. These are our whistles that we were making the other day, which have now had a chance to dry out. And they're going to go into the first of the firings, which is known as the biscuit firing, or bisque firing. bisque firing, the temperature goes up to 1000 degrees, and the clay is going to change from this normal state through to this bisque state. They shrink about 17% during the firing. Importantly, it changes state once it reaches about 600 degrees. So rather than being able to go back to mushy clay, once it gets over 600 degrees, it can't go back again. This is still absorbent. See the water being taken up, so it will then be able to absorb the glaze in the next stage. Right, what we're doing is we're mixing up the glaze, which is basically in effect powdered glass with the addition of various oxides to give the colour. For example, cobalt gives blues and tin gives white. And iron oxide gives browns. This is what's called an oatmeal glaze. I experimented with quite a lot of different oatmeal glazes on the market to get one just the right colour for haggis. We've got our whistles that have been through the biscuit firing. I've taken some hot wax and I've filled up the various holes that we don't want to fill up with glaze. Obviously with whistles it's quite vital that we keep our gaps and holes free. So it's simply a case of dunking them into the glaze. In addition to the little ones, we've also got their big brother, the haggis banks, which are also the musical instruments. I can't show you that right now because I've again covered up the vital holes with wax, but that again is going to get dunked. Okay, the final bit at this stage is to wipe the excess glaze off the bottom of the whistles, otherwise they would stick to the kiln shelf. Similarly with the big ones. Now I actually quite like to leave the odd extra streak and ripple in the glaze, because that then looks it more like the sort of veins that you get in the proper haggis. So what I'm trying to do now is catch up with some painting whilst the kiln's busy doing the glossed firing. They're going to be in there for about the next 7 hours whilst it goes up to 1250 degrees centigrade for the glaze to really mature properly. And then it'll take a further about 12 hours overnight cooling down again. So this is what I started originally doing, which was making a whole series of musical piggy banks in a range of different designs, about 60-70 different designs, all based again on the ocarina principle. But the main difference being that rather than the traditional 4 holes, they actually have the money slot, and depending on how much you cover the hole, you get the different sounds. So I can basically do any different hobby, sport, caricatures, professions. And the greatest pleasure for me is because everyone is totally unique. It means that I can do special commissions. So about 10-20% of the banks that I do are total one-offs. I've actually been very good and I've not cracked it open, so this is a voyage of discovery for both of us. The moment of truth. Still slightly warm. Remember how I said about the dribbles in the glaze, leaving those because that then resembles quite nicely the sort of veining you get in a true haggis. There we go. My latest invention, the coup bag.